Hello, I'm Erica Komisar. I'm a psychoanalyst, a parent guidance expert, and author of the book, Being There, Why Prioritizing Motherhood in the First 3 Years Matters. And I'm here today to talk to you about how much technology is too much technology for children. So technology is not all bad. There is a certain amount of limited technology that's been proven to not really do harm to children, but according to the American Pediatric Association, we really want to avoid technology in children under the age of 2. And that's because of brain development. Under the age of 2, their brains are much more susceptible to some of the negative effects of technology. And I'll tell you what some of those negative effects may be. Technology, and that includes the use of phones and iPads and computers, and even television to a certain extent, basically can increase dopamine in the brain. We all need to produce a certain amount of dopamine, but we don't want to increase it too much in those very early, impactful years of brain development. Also, with things like the iPad and the computer, they put out something called blue light, which if you have exposure to too much blue light, before bedtime in particular, it can interrupt sleep. And thirdly, social interaction is very important for all kinds of development, but particularly in the early years. We want to have a lot of interaction with our children as mothers, as fathers, as caregivers. And when children are on technology for too long a period of time, it basically interrupts the social interaction with the adults, the loving adults around them. It also will reduce the ability to tolerate frustration and boredom. So, remember that technology is very fast moving, and children have to learn to deal with boredom, boring moments. They have to learn to deal with waiting. And technology takes away that ability to really cope with frustration. And lastly, too much technology has been shown to impact the development of things like reflection or critical thinking or problem solving, also vocabulary, which are really impacted greatly and benefited from things like reading to your children rather than visual stimulation. So I have 4 tips today in terms of how much technology is okay for children. One is, if you're going to give them technology, whether it's a phone or an iPad after the age of 2, or access to a computer, you want to limit that access from the very beginning. It's very hard to set limits after the fact, but if they understand from the very beginning, when they're using a phone, when they're starting to use an iPad, that there are limits, it's much easier to implement those limits. 2, use the technology with them. If you sit and play a game on an iPad or a phone with a child, or watch TV with a child, it can actually be an activity together as long as you're not zoning out with your child, as long as you're interacting while you're doing it, and you're laughing and you're talking about the TV show and you're talking about the game. You're actually interacting with them. So you can use the technology with them rather than just letting them zone out with the technology. Third tip, make sure that it's not too realistic. Meaning technology has become, the games, the video games in particular, become very realistic in terms of their violence. And what the research shows is that the more fantasy-oriented, the less realistic, or what we say, the less like virtual reality the games, the better it is for the child. And my 4th tip is model behavior. If you spend a lot of time on your phone or your iPad or your computer or zoning out in front of television, your children are going to follow your model. If you want them to behave in a certain way or understand how much technology is too much technology, then you have to be able to regulate it yourself. These have been my tips on technology and children. I am Erica Komisar. If you like this video, please subscribe to other videos on my channel.